It's nice to see you guys here. Now, I'm Janine, and my role for the last 30 years is to run a company called Communicate. And the word is actually really relevant because at the moment, there is so much stuff coming in a communication way. If you just think about this morning, when you woke up, all of the stuff that's been happening, so you've got Snapchat, you've got Facebook, you've got YouTube, you've got all of these various ways of communicating. But one of the things that really interests me most of all is the fact that whatever you're doing, it's actually thinking about who's talking and who's are you talking with. And it is he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It's the people, the people, the people. And you hear this, but when you actually think about it, why would James Shaw go off to COP28? Why don't they just zoom in? Why don't they just do some sort of recording and send it off? No, the reason why they have to be there is because it's about relationships. It's about actually communicating when you're really talking to somebody. And that's the big difference. That's why for all of that money that they see going over, and they're going over by plane, I presume, all of that sort of thing, and they're going to a climate conference, but it's about the relationships, and that's what's important. So when we think about people and we think about communication, there's some really interesting research about what you and I do when we meet people. And we can do this online, virtually, and we can do this face-to-face. The very first thing that happens when you meet somebody for the first time is you make a judgment about them. Now, people say I don't, but you do. And the thing about it is what the research says we notice. And the very first thing that we notice about anybody, and this is in a nanosecond, and it is not necessarily conscious, is that we notice what their ethnicity is. And then we notice gender and all of those implications, and then we notice age. And those three things are what we don't change. That's what we are. And that is where the first set problems about prejudging comes into things and prejudice. The next thing we notice about anybody, interestingly enough, is what does the person look like? You know, like height, weight, size, clothing, all that sort of thing, and appearance stuff. We notice that. And we notice if it is different to what you expect it to be. Then it starts to become conscious. So we notice that. Then we notice, interestingly enough, and I am talking monoculturally, but I've done a lot of work in many, many different cultures around the world, and it's always the same. We notice facial expression. So you all know somebody that you can't read. You know that person who's got that blank face that's really uncomfortable to sort of relate with. And it's really interesting with some cultures when you can only see the eyes. And so one of the things, the next thing we notice is eye contact. And one of the things that's really important when you're building a bridge or building a relationship is eye contact. And so you have consequences with people that find eye contact difficult, or it's culturally unacceptable to have eye contact, particularly between a male and a female. So then you have eye contact, and then we notice movement, and there's movement we notice limps and things like that. We notice a disability in our mind that we notice. And then eventually we notice touch. If there's been a touch of any description, how did you connect? What was that touch like? And that all happens in, as you all know, way before we hear the sound of your voice. Now, because I work internationally, the first thing that happens is I find I've got an accent. Well, of course, I don't think I have an accent, but my accent turns up when I leave New Zealand. And there are some accents to my ear are really reasonably easy to move into so I can click in, but there are some accents that are quite challenging for me. So we notice all of those things. And if all of that's happening, then we start to actually hear what the person's saying. So when you meet people, we have some words that we say in where I work. We say there's two things you need to be. And one's attractive and the other one's memorable. Now, attractive, being attractive as in pretty or handsome is not what I'm talking about. Attractive is that people are attracted to you for some reason. There's something about you that they feel comfortable with. And the other one is memorable, so that afterwards you've been memorable. So what I want to do is move this along a bit and talk. Now, this person's up there because It's very hard to put a picture of a person on a screen that majority of people have quite positive feelings about. So he's up there because of his work, I think, with mental health. That's one of the reasons I popped him there. So the very first thing you need is enthusiasm. When you meet people either virtually, so I'm talking Zooming, but also when you meet people like this, the very first thing you need is enthusiasm. It is really hard to connect with somebody if so you hear people do this, they'll go, particularly in a presentation, they'll go like this, look, this is a bit boring, so we'll try and get through it quickly. There's nothing worse than that. It makes you, it turns you off. You'll have all heard someone do that. So you need enthusiasm. Well, I was working with the Chief Executive of Government Department in New Zealand, in Wellington, and he was doing a major presentation, and the problem about it was, for him, was he was talking to a senior leadership team, and it was about changes that are going to be occurring. And I said to him, this is probably a time when you need to be enthusiastic. And he looked at me and he said, I don't do enthusiasm, Janine. And I went, oh, what do you think I mean by enthusiastic? And he said, it's those people who throw chocolate fish. He was the most unlikely person ever to throw a chocolate fish. I said, no, it's not. In your mind, you're thinking, I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm really pleased you're here. And if you've got that in your mind, everything comes right. Because my next bit there is about ease, and then there's body language. And there was a guy by the name of Alan Pease, you've probably got a book of his somewhere here, who went around, he was Australian, and he was a so-called expert in body language. And what he said was stuff that people still think. For example, if you fold your arms, then there's something like you're defensive when you're doing. If those of you who haven't got your arms folded, just fold them for a moment. Just fold them for a moment. Now, as I said to you, I work with many different cultures, and I have yet to come across a culture that doesn't teach their children from about the age of 5 or 6 to fold their arms. So they get taught. And then the teacher goes, good for me, good for me. That's really pleased. You like that lovely feeling? So it feels good, doesn't it? I mean, it feels really nice. And an old body language expert said, well, this could be defensive. Look, it could be a mass of things. It could be you're cold, or it could be it's comfort. So the thing with body language is you have to adjust for the person you work with and all of those sorts of things. But generalising like anything, you need to look comfortable. You need to look open. You need to be good eye contact. That is, I am talking once again monoculturally, but if it is appropriate, you need good eye contact. And that makes such a difference. You also need credibility, believe it or not. You need to look like you know what you're talking about. And that's very important. But most of all, when you are with people, and this is virtual as well as when it's face-to-face, you need to actually, in my opinion, be present. And by that is you have to watch this thing. You have to watch this thing. You don't watch this thing. What I'm saying is you don't watch this thing. How many of you see people who just go, no, carry on, and, checking things? You just see it all the time. It is a block to communication. It's a block to the relationship. I get invited in to do quite interesting things, and they had it, what a 360 is when they check, give some feedback right round. And the chief executive said one thing that they were really, really good at was they had an open door policy, not a room like this, but they had an open door policy, and anybody's welcome. And feedback was, he's really hard to talk to. And so there was a bit of a mismatch here, so we had a conversation. Yes, he had his door open in his office, but when people walked in, he'd be on the screen and go, yes! And immediately the blocks went up. So lacked credibility for a start, but the whole business, that screen and these things really matter. Now, I always think, actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter sometimes. If you're just sitting somewhere and you're chatting to somebody, it doesn't matter whether you listen or not. It doesn't matter even if you're totally present. It doesn't matter. But when it matters, it absolutely matters. And one of the things I think is the breakdown in communication is that we forget to really listen. And the research says we only listen to people we like. All the other people, we put blocks up. It's really hard to listen. Now, when I say that, I don't want you suddenly to look like you're listening. You only need to listen when it matters. Does that make sense? The rest of the time it's conversation. The rest of the time it's a ping pong match. I say something, you say something, and you say something and I say something. That's kind of listening. You're kind of getting the drift. You're kind of getting the connections. We were just talking about that before, about the connecting that we do. So, you know, we like to find out a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and oh, and I've got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So that's conversation, and that's perfectly good. But when there is a relationship ding, when there is a relationship breakdown, when you're talking with somebody who's not like you, when you're in a situation, you have to listen. And listening is really hard because we're not trained to listen. We're trained to hear something and give a reply. We're trained to actually forget about actually hearing what the person's saying or having them feel that you're listening. We're not trained to do that particularly well. So let's have a look at what my block wall says. This is what you and I do. This is normal, all right? Absolutely normal. This is what you and I do. The very first thing, and some of you may have done this already, you go off somewhere else. Do you know what I mean by that? You know, when someone's talking and you're saying, oh my goodness, I've got to send that email. I've forgotten about that now. So next minute you're off sending your email rather than actually listening to this. Normal, okay? Normal. Now, we have two types of people in the world. We have introverts and we have extroverts. All that is introverts think and then talk, and extroverts talk whilst they're thinking. So the first thing is, for introverts, they like to rehearse. So they're listening and they're going, oh, and then I'll say this, oh, and then I'll say that, yep, and then I'll say this, and they're planning their responses without really listening to what the person's saying. Now, filtering, particularly people who are very frontal cortex focused, so that means that they love logic. So the person's having a lovely chat about this and a lovely chat about that, and then they go, yes, but when? Yes, but what? Yes, but how? So all they want is to pull out the facts. They just want to filter out the conversation. We all judge. People say to me, oh, I don't judge. I wait till I get to know them and then I make a decision. And I go, rubbish. You don't. You make a decision from that moment and then you work out if you're right or not. All right? So that's, we all judge. But if we judge negatively or if we prejudge, which may not be negative, for example, a couple of years ago, last year, I was asked to work with Victoria University. And they were bringing in 18 Saudi first secretaries, diplomats, and they asked me to work with them on presentation stuff, work like that. So I knew what they'd be like, all right? I knew that they would be, there were men and women, I knew that too. So I thought, I'm wondering what the room setup will be, because Victoria University was doing all of that. And I thought, the women will be there. And they probably, I'm not quite sure if they'll be in full burqa or, certainly because I've done quite a lot of work with Muslim women. And over here, the men will be over here, all right? So there'll be a big divide. Well, to my surprise, they were sitting on circular tables, men and women. And most of the women had a hijab, just a hijab on, a pretty coloured one. So they were sitting like this. And I got them all to do a mini presentation. And one of the women got up and talked about her role was to encourage girls in sort of not Bedouin, but in some of the tribal areas to actually go to school, and how she was encouraging schools. And I'm sort of thinking, no, I know what Saudi's like, you're not allowed to drive, and I know what Saudi's like in Bedouin. And actually, I was completely wrong. That these people there was many more connections with people like you and me than there were in my prejudging. So we all judge. Placating. Now, some of you will know what I mean by this. Someone is talking to you and they're a bit upset. And you see twinkly bits in the corner of their eyes and think, oh my goodness, they're going to be really upset. So you get your tin of golden syrup and you take the lid off and you go, don't worry, you'll be all right. One door shuts, another one opens, every cloud's got a silver lining, shut up. And then you can derail them, and which means the person's talking and you go, right, great, now the next thing we need to talk about is over here. So particularly if it's an uncomfortable conversation. And identify. You will all know someone who identifies. Of course, none of it's you. I know you're not identifiers. But somebody comes into your office here and they go, you're not going to believe this, but in the weekend, someone dinged my car. And the other person goes, I know exactly what you mean. An articulated lorry laden with rocks. They always have a worse story than yours. So you all know, now these are all normal, all right? So all of you will have at least one of these, and it's perfectly all right. And I'm not going to ask you because you may have gone off on a dream. So those are normal, and that's perfectly all right if it doesn't matter. But when it matters, it matters. And people talk about listening, and they go on listening courses, and they say things like, I hear what you say, and stuff like that, which is such rubbish. The thing is that all you have to have in your head is, I really want to hear what you say. Because when you're listening and it matters, it's because the relationship isn't fantastic. The relationship isn't established. There's a block for some reason. So every time one of those wee blocks comes into your head, if you can think to yourself, I really want to hear what you say. Yeah, I would like to ask you, no, I really want to hear what you say. The other thing is you're not a sponge. You're not just sitting there listening. What you're doing is you're questioning for clarification. Now, if there's a power imbalance in the conversation, and so many places I work with say I've got a flat, we're in a flat organisation, I go, okay, great, because it's not. The thing is that if someone is saying something and you think, oh, I wonder what the TEG means, I can't remember what the TEG is, and next minute you're hooked over there and the person's continuing to talk. So you need to say, excuse me, I don't know what the TEG is. So you need to question for clarification. You need to ask for more information. So does this happen every Thursday, or was it only that one Thursday? And then you check that you've understood before you give the solution. So I've been working with a group of engineers, and so the people, the person will be talking and they'll go, I'll tell you how to fix that, because they know. And they possibly are quite right, but they've got to give the person a chance to talk. So I thought we could have a little exercise. I'm sure this is what they do on this institute. So I thought I'd have a little exercise. Now, I'm sure we've got enough people for pairs-ish, all right? So just sit beside somebody. If you don't know them, you're going to find out a bit about them, all right? So this does not hurt, okay? Now, I want, in your pairs, I want you to find someone who has the larger shoe size. Now, Bigfoot, what I'm going to get you to do is I'm going to get you to be the listener, all right? Now, the talkers are going to talk. Obviously, we're coming up towards, this is New Zealand, Aotearoa, coming towards the end of the year, generalising like anything, we're having a break. All right, so it may be happy holidays, it may be happy Christmas, whatever it is. But I want you to talk to the talker, that's Littlefoot, is going to talk about what they are planning to do, say in the summer holidays, what they're planning to do. Now, listeners, blocks are going to come in. You're going to say, oh, I'm going there too, that sort of stuff. No. Just, I want you to be thinking in your head, I really want to hear what they say. And then what I want you to do is you can, if you're not quite sure what they've said, you can say, I'm not quite sure, did you say wongamata? It doesn't matter what it is, you're going to ask a question. Then you maybe some more information, and I'm going to give you a whole 2 minutes conversation. And when 2 minutes is up, I'm going to get you to check back that you kind of got the gist of what the person said, and then we'll swap roles. And I will use my phone as my stopwatch. So off you go, for 2 minutes, you're going to have a chat. Now, what I want you to do, Bigfoot, is check back that you understood what the person was kind of talking about. Now, don't parrot everything back. They don't need that. They just need you to got just the key message, all right? Okie doke. Just do that, and then we'll swap roles. Okay, team. Time to change roles. Change roles, because we can't just let Bigfoot just be the listener. Bigfoot's turn over the holidays, and listener, remember, I really want to hear what you say, even if something comes in and you want to interrupt. But you can, if you're not sure what they're talking about, you can get more information, and then when your 2 minutes is up, you're going to check back that you've got the gist of what the person is saying. Okay? Off you go. Okay. Now just swap back, and just check back that you've got the gist of what you think the person was talking about. I don't know about you, but it's so exciting when someone genuinely listens. Now we're talking about something as simple as your holidays or what you were doing, and that sort of thing. But when it matters, it might be that you have a contrary viewpoint to the person. And we do quite a bit of work in conflict. We're not in conflict, we're working with people that have conflict. One of the things that we know is if people would only listen without prejudgment and getting their own viewpoint across first or during, it would be so much easier. It's so hard though. It is so hard to actually listen to a contrary viewpoint without interrupting, or without rehearsing, or without derailing, or any of those blocks that we put up. It is so hard. And yet if you do it, if you actually manage to just listen to the person thinking, I really want to hear what they say, and then check back that you've got what you think that they've said, and they say, yep, that's what I said, you have much better chance of putting your viewpoint across, because people are more happy, more comfortable about, as long as you've listened to them first. So I've gone on about listening and body language a bit, about this sort of stuff. But one of the other things that's really important with that impact and presence is that people feel comfortable with you. And people feel comfortable if you are talking in a language they understand, if you are talking with them and thinking to yourself, I'm really pleased to be here, and I'm really pleased you're here. And if you have those things, because when I learned about body language, we used to think that it was the showing of how you feel. Now we know if you're thinking something, that's what do your body language, So what we also know is there's a thing called confident body language and open body language. And one of the things I'm really quite keen on with virtual information, when you're doing Zoom or Teams or whatever, is that people put their whole face in the screen. Have you seen that? I've seen people's nostrils, most unattractive. So what we need is you need to be from this bit up so they can see you, all right? Now, this is a very interesting thing. When we sit, everything, body language is habit, that's all it is. So as you're sitting there by yourself, you're sitting, this is how we sit, people, this is how you sit. Oh, well, there's other sociological reasons for why we sit certain ways, but we sit like this. Now, if you are you're on Zoom, you want to have, first of all, a seat that doesn't wriggle, because that's very bad. So pop your arms further apart than your shoulders. Now, this feels really weird, but what we know is that's nice and open, and this can be used in any cultural situation. You're nice and open, your hands are there, and what we say is the birds can fly through. And if you sit like this and speak, people think that, you're open and easy to listen to, but also your brain is saying, oh, I'm in my confident body language mode. Oh, I will sound more confident. My brain will work really clearly. It is bizarre, and it works. So what I want you to do is just to sit for a moment, and I want you to sit with your bottom and the back of the seat. Sit up and put your arms further apart. Just, obviously you can't, there's no table, she says, but put them apart, and I want you to sit open, all right? How does that feel? I look more open, and my hands work, so I just look more open. So it's just something to think about when you're on virtual, because we are bombarded by communication. It's great that you can work from home. It is great that you can work from home, there's no question of that. But so when it matters, it should be as much as possible face to face. when it matters and the relationship is not good, when it matters, when what you're saying is really important or you really want to hear something, then if you can be face to face with somebody, it is even better. But that's not always able, you know, as you say, you know, sometimes you're on Zoom or but be open so that people can see you. Just check it back. One of the things I always think, there's a wonderful adage that you've all heard before, but it is true when it comes to communication, that long after people have forgotten what you've said, they'll remember how you made them feel. And that to me is the absolute key of good communication. When we have so much other stuff happening in this very complex world of ours, some of the basics still matter. So thank you very much.
Thank you again very much, Janine. I found that fascinating. Now I'm incredibly conscious of my thank you very much for sharing. Thank you to the Guest Institute crew as well for setting this up and putting this on.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.